Hey guys, Toby Morrison here, and on the other end is the beautiful Natalie, or as we can call it online, Nat's numbers. Hey Nat,
Hey, Toby.
I'm super excited to talk to you because we actually connected last week, which is awesome, and we had a great conversation for way too long. Um, but for anyone who doesn't know you yet and hasn't seen your YouTube channel, you had chronic fatigue syndrome
Yep.
and a whole host of other things. You've been through a lot.
Yeah, I have.
but
Yeah. I've been through a lot.
it's
Yeah.
it's funny that like the thing about people with chronic fatigue syndrome is like most of them have been through a lot, and there's a lot of story behind their life.
There's like a lead up. There's a lead up to it. It's far more complex and rich than just we get something and we have to deal with it.
Now you caught my attention. So I actually came across you like 2 years ago, and I said this to you last week. And you have like, there's one video on your YouTube channel that has like almost 100,000 views, and the title is "How I Cured Chronic Fatigue Syndrome." And at the time when I saw your video, I was like, I kind of looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, whatever, like some girl just talking about whatever. And 2 weeks
You were
ago,
cynical. You were
I was
cynical.
cynical, and even though I'm the one that helps people with chronic fatigue syndrome too, I was like, oh, this chick's just like, she's just talking hippie nonsense. Like it's not, like she probably didn't even have it, like whatever. I was just like, the word cure in itself is a dangerous word to use, but we'll get onto that later because I've got the meaning behind cure here, which is really fascinating. It's kind of changed my perception of it, but. Anyway, your second video popped up 2 weeks ago, which was how I cured chronic fatigue syndrome part two. And
Yeah.
anyway, I watched it because I had some time, and I was like, wow, this chick makes sense. And I was so proud of you, and I got in contact with you as soon as possible because I was like, it was so refreshing to see someone sit there, and be as beautiful as you are, and put yourself out there, and speak your truth. And I think that that's just so inspiring, and especially because that's what I do too. And I just felt so compelled by your story, and hence why we're doing this interview now for the listeners out there because it's inspiring, and it's comes from a place of strength and power. And I think that the more people need to hear this story. So before we get on any further, I just want to read this meaning out. So a cure is the end of a medical condition, right? And I think a lot of people, especially me, I'll speak on behalf of myself, I used to think that a cure was that you had to have a pill to cure it. So, like, yeah, there's like a magic pill and you take it and you cure it. And with chronic fatigue syndrome, as you know, there is no pill.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I see what you mean. I mean, it's almost like because you and I both know to heal from chronic fatigue, it's sort of a
Mm,
multifaceted, holistic approach.
mm,
You have to approach it from multiple perspectives and vantage points.
mm.
So yeah, so that idea of a cure all, you take one thing and it'll make everything go away.
Yes.
It's not how it
No,
works.
and this is why I dismissed your first video because that was
Yeah,
it wasn't you or the video, it was my perception of the word cure, right?
yeah, yeah.
And anyway, so it goes on. The substance or procedure that ends the medical condition, such as a medication, a surgical operation, a change in lifestyle, or even a philosophical mindset that helps end a person's suffering. So you have cured CFS. How cool is
That's
that?
amazing. That last part of the
I
definition.
know. Yeah, it's. I'm going to screenshot it so I got it in my phone because I think it is really cool because I kind of stayed away from the word cure because I think there's such a misperception about it. But like I said, I watched your second video and I was like, this girl knows. Like you know what's going on, and I just think like what you speak is just such common logical sense, and we'll get into your story as well, about what you're doing now and like how different an alternative it is, and I guess you're taking an approach that most people wouldn't take, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and I think it's so fascinating to hear your perspective because when I chose that title, when I chose to do the video, I didn't realize it at the time, but I think because of the background that I came from, I had seen people heal and become cured of a wide variety of different diseases, right? So
Mm.
my story is a really unconventional one. I mean, it's kind of unusual. Here I was, a nutritionist who was trained. I had the protocol, I had the nutritional protocol and detoxification plans for people with CFS, fibromyalgia, diabetes, heart disease, right?
Mm.
And I got CFS. Um, I woke up one morning and it was like I had this mutant version of the flu, is the only way I could describe it.
Yep. Yep.
You know, um, I was dizzy. I was nauseous, obviously fatigued. So I went from being this like avid athlete, exercise fanatic. If you talk to any of my friends, I mean, when we would go out to the movies, they would have their like even popcorn and licorice, and I would smuggle in my apples and my like water.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like waiting for one of the employees to mention something because I was such a food like, you know, I
You're
was just
obsessed.
ready. Oh yeah, and I mean not only obsessed but passionate. It's like if anybody's going to comment on this healthy food, like I'm going to just, I'm going to talk about food politics, and I was totally devoted and an
Mm.
avid believer in the work that I was doing. So to be doing everything in the physical world that is supposed to make you a vital and healthy human being
Mm.
and still get sick
Mm.
was was quite an initiation of sorts. I mean, it was like I had to change the way that I viewed reality in some ways.
And I mean, before that, you also had quite a, tumultuous kind of life. Like, 13. I read on your website. I went straight to your website and read a little bit about your background. But can you just tell, like, what you kind of not in depth, but just that kind of timeline of 13 to to 24.
Oh, geez. Well, I mean, drug addiction, eating disorders, abuse, obesity. Um,
Yeah, this was like
I mean,
started from the age of 13. You said you had was it obesity first and then eating disorder?
um, say again that it was what
Was
first?
obesity first and then eating
Yeah,
disorder?
yeah. So I was a chubby kid. Like I was
Mm.
just a really chubby kid. I lived right across the street from a candy shop.
Hard to imagine right now though, looking at you.
Oh, you should see. I should show you pictures.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was a really, um, it was how I was coping, and
Mm.
it was my joy. It was like, it was the way that I coped with what was going on in my life. And then soon after that was drugs. I lived in this really interesting. Both of my parents were hippies,
Mm.
and my mom was, she grew pot. There was like hashish on our dining room table.
Yeah,
So
right.
so it was kind of like a part of the culture that I was in as well. So yeah, so I had a really interesting upbringing in that sense. I went through a lot,
Mm.
and I think with the people that I've interacted with CFS, clients and that I've corresponded with, that seems to be a theme that I've seen is that um, we've gone through a lot.
Yeah.
With the onset of the illness, sometimes we were going through a lot. We take on a lot,
Mm.
and we're sort of the go-getters. We're the type A. We think that we can get it done, that we can be the ones that do everything.
Superhero.
Superhero,
Mm.
yeah. And our body is sort of letting us know that it's time to sort of change. Notice that we have this type A overachieving
Mm.
quality to us. And by the way, this is why having this experience of chronic fatigue is so difficult psychologically for us, because we are disciplined, dedicated, hardworking people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of this like incredible irony is that we manifest an illness that is exactly like our deepest fear. Is that suddenly we're fatigued, we can't achieve, we can't
Mm.
um, prove to the world that we're good enough by how much we produce. And so suddenly we have to face this concept this deep fear of, oh my gosh, am I lazy? Am I, a fear, projection, and judgment from others.
Yeah,
It's
this is why I think what you're doing is awesome, and why I loved your videos is because you speak from that emotional side, and I think it is so important. And it's not that it's a psychological illness; it's just that it affects us psychologically as well as physiologically, right?
yeah, and that's where people get hung up. It's really difficult in our Western world, or in the world of Western medicine. We get hung up on that. It's this fundamental, what I believe is a fundamental component in healing from CFS, is when we start to talk about mindset and when we start to talk about the psychology behind CFS, it can kind of become a dangerous territory.
Of course.
Because it's not, we're already here. I mean, my dad sent me an email early on in my illness when I was bedridden that was basically, it was like a link to this like Google page on, I forgot what it's called, but it's Munchausen's syndrome. It's like basically where it's all in your head and you're making it up.
Nice.
And, so it's dangerous territory because we're already so isolated and we already are dealing with an illness that isn't readily accepted by society. So when we start to veer into this concept of mindset and psychology, for some people, it triggers that feeling that, are you saying that this is just not real? It is physiologically happening, but because of how we've been educated, and because most of our medical doctors are still really in my mind, in the Stone Ages, we cannot even fathom that when we talk about the psychology, we're intricately linking that to physiology. You can't separate the two. So when I was sick and I got my blood work done, there was something seriously wrong. I had the white blood cell count of a chemo patient. They were like, wow, your immune system is nearly non-functioning,
Yeah. So you were obviously really, severely sick at that stage.
I was really sick, but the doctors weren't able to put a label on it. There wasn't a pharmaceutical that was hooked into it, right? So they kind of were just like, well, it must be psychological in origin. And now, as there's scientific research that's coming out that's saying you can't separate the two. You can't.
Things like neuroscience and, the biology of belief. So Bruce Lipton's been talking about it for ages. And but it's true. Like, our psychological state affects our physiological state.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If we're, physiologically feeling not great, then all of a sudden our mentality goes down and we're at a lower level of consciousness almost.
Yeah.
Unless we raise the consciousness, which is kind of what you and I teach. I feel like you definitely teach that, is raising your consciousness and actually looking into it and finding the answers for yourself.
Yes. And exactly. And that's where people get hung up, is because when we start using those words, what I would have visualized is raising my consciousness. So like repeating a mantra or meditating is going to somehow like heal my body. But the thing is,
and that stuff's good, right? Like it's good.
Yeah.
But there's a missing link, right?
The missing link is that you cannot separate the two. So when you change your consciousness, when you change the way that you think, or the way that you, when you change who you are, your decisions change.
100%.
You can't change. So the spiritualists that are out there that talk about how it's all vibration based, right? And that and imply that no action is necessary. That's ridiculous. I mean, we all understand that's ridiculous. But it's why, you could have two clients with CFS. And one client could be having an awesome nutrition routine, doing all the right things in the physical world, and they're not getting the results. And another client has shifted their perspective, their mindset, from one of self-hatred to self-love, from one of meeting the needs of others to meeting the needs of self. And when they make those same decisions, they produce a different result.
Mm.
And so these are the things that we're talking about, right? It's not that nutrition isn't essential. It is. It's not that resting and exercise isn't essential. It's absolutely
Yeah,
essential.
yeah, yeah.
But it's that if you don't address the fundamental um, sort of consciousness or being of where it's coming from,
Mm.
it just doesn't have the same results. And so that's what so here I was, this like incredibly uh, physical world person. So I believed to the core of my being that if you had a problem, I could solve it with nutrition.
Wow.
I believed it, you know,
That's
100%.
dangerous.
Yeah. Oh, I preached it. It was just like where I was
Yeah,
coming from,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. And that was your
and so,
wake up call. Like that's, I think that's probably why, a reason, the blessing in disguise, right, for you.
yeah. Well, and what I believe is a spiritual initiation. I think that so many of us with CFS are um, being initiated,
It's a
on
good
a
way of looking
spiritual.
at it. I really like that.
Well, I think that we're a bunch of shamans, and I think that the reason that there's chronic illness more than ever before is because we have separated ourselves from spirit, from
From
soul. We don't have
ourselves.
that yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Especially I feel like we're not listening to ourselves. And I
Yeah,
guess that's what you're saying. Like our soul, you can call it spirit, soul, yourself,
yeah,
whatever, wherever, whatever you want it to be. Really, you can, But really, what I feel like you're saying is that, like, yeah, it's almost like we're running away from what we feel like what we need. It's like we're neglecting ourselves, right? So, like, physically, emotionally, spiritually, everything. It's just like, and that's the hard part about it, is that everyone's so individual, and like rather than looking out there, it's almost like it's like the initiation you're talking about is coming back at you, like what's going on inside here for me, what do I need to do for myself.
yeah. We get stripped,
Mm.
right? We get stripped.
Mm.
Our relationships suffer. Our jobs
It's
suffer.
painful, because I remember I went through it, but it's more painful because I see so many people now, like through my program, and clients who email me. It's like the pain that you go through in that moment is just
Yeah.
excruciating. And I think maybe I don't speak for myself, but maybe for you too. Like I kind of forget how much pain there actually was in that time.
It's so funny. I was thinking about that before we got on the call. Is
Yeah.
for me, this was so long ago.
Mm.
And I was like, I wrote down before we got on, I was kind of like, okay, I had to remind myself what were the events and what were the things that happened,
Mm.
which I hope will give faith to the people that are watching, is that there's going to be a point when you're healed and you're not, it's going to be so far away that you might have actually forgotten those dark nights of the soul, the sobbing in the bathtub. I had a lot of that. I had, those moments when you just think, this is it. I'm going to be this like soft, weak, vulnerable, um, helpless thing.
Did you
You know,
did you used to believe that you were never going to get better? Was there a point in that time where you were like, "This is, I'm done," kind of thing, like those moments of like no hope and wanting to give up, and
yeah, I did. I had those. They happened at night. For some reason, it was always in the middle of the night
mm,
where I would kind of have that thought come in of, and I get anxiety attacks, and I would get like really emotional, and
mm,
it's, yeah. So at night I would really get mired in that. Um, but for whatever reason, I don't know why. Maybe because I had a great support system. Maybe because of the background that I came from, where I'd seen people heal from terminal cancer. So by the time morning came around, I got back on my feet. You know,
yes.
metaphorically speaking.
Okay, cool. I just want to point that out because this is what I say to a lot of people, because it's almost like there is no perfect kind of scenario or
No.
recovery, and so like because a lot of people have this perception or illusion that you have to be positive all the time, or you're not allowed to have any negative thoughts, or you're not allowed to have any anxiety, and that's a
Don't.
that's a prison sentence right there, because then you're always going to be stuck. But like I used to have the same thing. I used to remember like I'm never going to get better, but then the next morning I would get up and do what I had to do to help myself, regardless of how I felt, just so I could start progressing and moving forwards. And just like you said, you snapped out of it, and so it's just about almost like not believing everything that that comes up, and also allowing it to come up, not fighting it.
Yeah.
Just it is what it is, and then you just like you go along and you do the best you can do in any situational circumstance that comes up, and that's all you can do, right?
Yeah, well, I think you nailed something there, Toby, because I think that another initiation in the healing process is a purging. Like I think that we go through this death, and to me, it's a death of an old self, like so
Mm-hmm.
those moments when I was like sobbing in the bathtub. Oh, I have a couple memories of I couldn't go trick or treating with my daughter one year. It was like the first year, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't walk.
Wow. Yeah.
And so these really dark moments, but it was this purging of this version of I had gotten so away from who I really was. Um, and I hear that from so many. You said this earlier. You said that it's where we get disconnected from the self,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, the thing that happens is that we are so into people pleasing or so into meeting whatever, effed up ideals exist in our society about worth that we don't even know what we want,
Yeah.
right? So it's like
100%.
when I was a nutritionist, I thought I wanted the perfect body, $1 million bank account,
Yeah.
like, the best clothes. Like I was so just in that world. So if you were to ask me, what do you want? What would it be? What would it look like to be you? I would have, I would have said things that I thought were what I wanted, but they were perpetuating the disease process, the disconnection from self, from that like real deep, calm, confident, aligned place. So those deep emotional surges that happen in the healing process, I think are necessary. I think that it's where something is dying, that some part of us that's not who we really are is dying off.
Letting go.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I like it.
Yeah.
It's good. It's so like I said, it's just nice to listen to a different perspective, and I think this is hopefully gives people a different perspective out there to look at something they may be not looking at. And this is the thing that I see is like people always come and say I'm trying so hard, nothing's working, and like my answer is almost always the opposite, which is like, okay, well, just stop trying. And it's so hard to hear that because we are, like you said, that type A personality, that person, like it's like, it's like that. It's almost like this energy from up here. It's like that grind.
Oh,
Like
it does.
yeah,
I do feel it there.
yeah, and it's just like constant trying and gripping and struggling through it. Whereas like the whole point of like you being here is to not do that anymore. You know?
Oh, absolutely. You just distinguished a sensation of how these different versions of ourselves feel, One version is this like it's that striving. It's like, and I felt it here. I felt it here in my chest, that like anxiety. Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. It's really hard,
Oh, it is. It is. It's but then there's this other self. And I think that in those dark nights, sometimes we rub shoulders or confront that other self, that calm, centered self. You could also call it just the natural healing intelligence within yourself that, it's like when you get a cut, you're not like, heal, you're not like, you're not trying to make it heal,
Just let it go, right? Yeah.
You just, obviously you want to put, you want to make sure the dirt doesn't get in there or what have you, right? There's physical actions to take to create an environment for the healing. But at a certain point, you just got to kind of get out of the way and you got to trust that healing intelligence of your body.
One of the things that's popped up for me recently, which, especially when I started preaching this stuff years ago, was you have to have faith and belief. And like faith, like not so much in a religion sense, but it might be for some people, but more just like faith in like trusting the process, and look, because like if we're anxiety and I guess depression is a drawback mindset to thinking that in the future things aren't going to work out for me.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a positive psychology thing where it's like, things are going to be great, blah, blah, blah. It's more just like faith that like, no matter how bad my life gets and how much suffering I'm going to go through and I'm going through right now, like I'm still here, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, because like in those moments of suffering, like, no, no kind of positive psychology pump up's going to do you justice, right? So, but having that faith in that moment of just like complete despair, can just really keep us alive, like keep us going, because I think, like, again, you and I kind of forget what it was like, but when we have these conversations, it reminds me of
Me too.
the tough times that you actually go through in that. So it's almost just having that, unwavering faith and belief that, what, regardless of the struggle and the setbacks, that I'm gonna get out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think it strips us clean
Hmm.
to the point where we have to dig and excavate for that, whatever that looks like, so for me,
Yeah.
and that was numbers, numerology, this concept that there's a divine design behind existence, right? That was my doorway. For other people, it might be religion, or it might be just this sense of peace. It might be nature, but it's like it strips us down, and to basically where we have to confront what really matters, what are our real values, and when push comes to shove, I think loneliness is a big factor with CFS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Loneliness is a big one, and so it's where you sounds so trite, but where you are required to fall in love with yourself.
Yeah. It's so funny, like, because, like, I used to think, like, self-love was literally, like, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I love you, and it was just like, it's not like that at all. Like, self-love is really just asking better questions for your higher self, or doing things for your higher self for the best of yourself and the world, right?
Yeah, and this is the real kicker, is that can you trust yourself more than anybody else? More than a lab coat, right?
Yeah.
More than a blood test, more than you or me, more than some practitioner. Can you trust yourself? And beyond that, can you trust yourself enough that you're going to take care of yourself?
Nice.
Because these are the things that we confront on an hour by hour basis in life. Is I think that most of us have that healing intelligence. Our bodies are so wise. They're I mean, there's trillions of cells in our body right now that are keeping everything working. It's unreal when you really fathom and think about it. And so that loneliness bleeds into this deep regard and sense of self-trust. And we talked about this. This is why it's hard to see it now when you are in the acute stage of CFS, but that when we come out of it, we are more luminous, more vital, and more healthy than anybody that hasn't gone through it.
Grounded as well. Like, almost like more, like, people will say to me that I'm like a wise old soul, and like, we're shooting this video. Right now I'm 27, and sometimes I feel 50, but it's more of like, I don't know, the like wisdom. It's almost like the suffering. The mess is the message. Almost like, yeah, the suffering is the beauty.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're never going to take health for granted.
And when you do, it's just a good reminder not to. Because
faster.
Yeah, that's right. But that's what it's like. There is the thing that I think is important to address as well is that health is a forever thing, and like it's not about, like, you said something the other day which was awesome on our Skype call, and you said it was something like, you don't want to base your success off always being healthy, or your goal is just to always be healthy, because that's not true. Like, illness, and if there's health, there's illness, and then if there's illness, there's health, and so it's like this equilibrium. If you get a cold or a flu, it's almost a beautiful thing to stop and slow down and just allow yourself just to rest. Or I mean, chronic fatigue syndrome can be a blessing in disguise. It can be the thing that you actually need, you know, like, which is so hard to hear that. And like, I think if someone told me back then, especially when with my basketball career and where I was going as a teenager, if someone told, I would have probably punched them in the face, like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you know. But like now, it's almost like rather than try and fight reality, you almost just accept it for what it is. It's not resignation, but like, yeah, this is probably what I need right now. You know what I
Oh.
mean? In that
Oh.
moment of whatever is happening in your life, whether it's, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, you know?
I do. I think that the body is a barometer, and
Mm.
I think that what came up for me when you were talking is the first cold or flu that you get after you recover.
Yeah.
Remember that? Did you like? Do you remember like the first time you got
Scary.
sick?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like I was recovered. I was at 100%. I was doing really good, and I remember I got the flu, and I flipped out
Yes.
because I was like, oh my God, like this is a sign because with CFS, any type of illness, any type of disease
Yeah.
symptom just
Yes.
triggers this,
100%. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah. Good. Keep going.
this
This is good.
PTSD. It's like PTSD. I mean, seriously, it's like a trauma. And so, I had to have
Interesting. Yeah.
family members go, listen, you know, you're just sick, and you've been doing great, and everybody around you has the flu. So it's like it makes sense that you'd be. I got into that perfectionism, of like I got to make sure that I'm always above water, and
Always have
it's why
energy. Always be up and about. Always be positive.
always
Yeah.
always be good, always be good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Um,
tiring. That's another striving pattern.
It is. It is. Again, that's like that other self. You'll notice that you'll go back to that other self that was sort of
Yes.
there lingering at the onset of the illness.
Hmm.
And you'll start to notice him or her, and be able to develop a sensitivity to notice when you go there.
And also, I kind of like the fact that it's almost like a separation, a disassociation, or a normalization of it's normal. It's appropriate to get sick
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and so it's just whether it's appropriate or not. Like it's appropriate to be exhausted if you've done a huge amount of stuff, or if you've been stressed, or if you've exercised a lot. And it's hard to distinguish between that and then when you're in that CFS state of, onset of symptoms and just complete struggle, exhaustion throughout the whole entire day for no apparent reason. So you can separate the two and start to, distinguish between good tired and bad tired, or CFS tired is what I would call it. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I've done a video on it recently about that, the separation between the two, because like you did post CFS when you had that first flu, you disassociated yourself from the realization, or you had the realization that actually no, this is appropriate. Everyone else has had the flu, and they're healthy, so this is normal for me too. And that's what you did, And then you obviously recovered from it, and you were fine.
Yes.
Yeah, you went on.
Yeah. It's, I love that. I never thought about it about disassociation, but it's such a necessary thing. And even 8 years recovered, I still sometimes have to remind myself,
Mm-hmm.
if I start to get that,
Mm-hmm.
is to go, this is a normal part of being human, is to
Yes.
have those low moments.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we could go. This is a completely different topic, but
I know.
I had a
I
guy.
kind of, yeah.
Oh, we could talk so much, but I had a guy the other day, and he's just like, how do I get rid of? Is there any tools or tricks to get rid of fear, insecurities, and doubts? And he that's what he was like. He wanted a coaching session for it, and I'm like, yeah, the tool is not to get rid of it because everyone has it. Everyone, just like everyone gets a cold and flu, everyone does have doubts and uncertainty, insecurity about themselves, no matter how amazing they might be on the outside. It's all relative. We're all human beings. We've all got our insecurities and struggles. Even if you read some of the greatest people in the world, what they've achieved, they had just as much doubt and insecurity as anyone else. It's just that they didn't, it didn't let them stop them from doing what they wanted to go and achieve or do or create, because they were in line with their values or their vision or their dream that was bigger than their problem, or their struggle or their doubt or their insecurity. But anyway, let's get back to you, because so tell me what you like. Tell me the process.
Yes.
From you're obviously super not going well at all. Sick, CFS. It's hard to give it a short answer, but what did you do from there to now, or until you got better, like what were three things that really helped you? And I know you mentioned numerology, and so I think you turned to a book, and you kind of had a realization, like I need
Yeah, well,
yeah.
okay, so here's what happened. So I got really, really sick, and I tried everything in the physical world to fix it, right? I did candida protocols, leaky gut protocols, everything. So, I mean, that's just the surface
Yeah,
part of it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
did
I can imagine.
everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first step was surrendering. And that was huge for me. I remember driving home after I had spent like the last like $300 that we had to devote because we didn't have health insurance.
Oh
So,
wow.
and that's another component with people with CFS is that, it's we don't have the resources sometimes
No.
to be able
Yeah.
to get help.
Yeah.
And so I remember driving home and it was just this moment of realizing that I wasn't going to figure it out. Now, what I mean by that is I had basically gotten out of the running all of like the main diseases that could be cured by Western medicine. So, I didn't have, I didn't have some random virus or I didn't have, I don't know. I mean, I got tested for AIDS, hepatitis, tropical
Yeah.
diseases,
Everything
lice.
excluded. Yeah.
So I kind of was like at this point where like, all right, I don't know what the label is, but um, but I know that I am the only one that is going to be able to heal it, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't need to know what it's called. And so that was when I mean I don't, because when I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, they basically said we don't know what causes this.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Most
it's like
most doctors don't even diagnose it. So
right.
yeah.
So it's like they're like, but you're probably going to have it forever, and so the first step was surrendering and just saying, I don't need to know what causes it because I have a scientific mind. I was trying to figure it out, what organ, what system, what particular thing was doing it. And so I just said, I'm going to let go.
Whoa.
And I'm going to just focus on the concept of healing. And so that was the first step.
Nice.
And then the second step was opening up to the idea that if everything that I had done in the physical world wasn't working, in fact, sometimes it was making it worse.
Yeah.
That, I was so stressed. I mean, at a certain point, like I had read all of these different candida protocols, and they all have conflicting ideas of what you can and cannot eat. That it
drove you insane.
Yeah, like I had nothing I could eat because I was in such a fear mindset.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
I was like, well, I can't have potatoes, I can't have nuts, I can't have fruit, I can't have, so.
And when you're in that fear state, just quickly,
Yeah.
like that's sympathetic overload, which is already what you're in because your body's trying to help yourself heal. So you're adding more stress onto an already stressed body. And this is what I see with a lot of patients is like everything's from a place of fear. I need to get better because I hate being sick or I'm scared of being sick. I need to get better so I don't get worse. Like they're really disempowering ways to go about things, and it's not in a calm manner, which is what really ultimately helped you, recover. So continue. Yeah.
Well, and it's like the two selves, right? There's the self that's motivated from fear, and there's the self motivated from love and self-care, right? So the self-care Natalie wasn't there yet. Like I was still just like terrified and
the self-care Natalie, I like it. Second,
yeah,
what is the third person? Yeah.
That kind of mothering, like, I don't know, I imagine her as like mothering and feminine, she would have just been like, oh, try this food. And like, how does this feel? Like it would have been different. It would have been, completely full of compassion and understanding and patience and gentleness. So that surrender was key. And then recognizing that I needed to try to start to do something different. And then I opened up this book, and it was a numerology book. And in the book, numerology talks about how we each have certain gifts and certain flavors of purpose on the planet. And when I read this passage in this book about what my purpose was, it was totally 180 degrees opposite from what I had been doing in my life.
Whoa.
And so it was this moment where I kind of thought, I wonder what would happen if I start to work on myself in an energetic way. Like if I start to change the very way that I think about myself and the way I approach life. And so that's when I started a meditation practice. That's when I started to basically rethink my career. And so step one, surrender. Step two was focus on having a sort of spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
That was what it was. It was where I started to just connect with myself and trust that there's a power within me that's more powerful than anything outside of me. That's really what it came down to.
Yeah, that's a good driver.
Yeah. And then step three was letting that new self be the director or manager of my decisions. So again, I wasn't just sitting and meditating and then things changed. I was sitting, meditating, and becoming this new person. And suddenly my decisions started to change.
Mm.
Like instead of getting into that incredible stressed state of what am I going to eat? Am I going to move today? Am I going to just lie still? What am I going to do? When I got into that state, when I would meditate on my numbers or my sort of superpowers of what makes me brilliant in this world, I suddenly had this newfound confidence and this very gentle approach to my healing process. And so I remember one day I was like, I couldn't eat protein. So that was one of the things, is that if I had anything heavy,
yeah,
I would want to throw up and
wow.
I would get dizzy. So definitely this was digestive in origin. So I remember I just had this guidance to have a tablespoon of like protein, of like an egg.
Okay.
And, and I did it and I was able to stomach it.
So
And
it was almost like exposure therapy.
Yeah,
in a
exactly.
sense. Yeah.
Exactly. But it was coming from this like sort of inner intelligence. It was just this trust that I could gently move forward and experiment and find my own path and find my own way.
Mm-hmm. Should we talk about how long it took you?
Sure. So,
roughly,
so I was full on in CFS symptoms, bedridden, massively lost tons of weight. I was almost near emaciated.
Yeah.
For probably from onset of symptoms, probably, gosh, it's hard to remember. I think it was 5 or 7 months. It was something around that.
Mm.
So that was like the acute, time. And then when I started to do my meditation practice and worked with my numbers, I think within about 2 weeks, I started to feel improvement. So I started to kind of feel a little bit more energy, less nausea, less dizziness.
When you say work with numbers, what is, like, just for someone who doesn't know, because there's a lot of people out there who have never heard of numerology and, that kind of side of things.
Yeah.
Explain what working with numbers means.
It means that I gave myself permission to working with numbers are just pointing to personality types.
Yep.
So they're there's introverted people, there's extroverted people. Yep. There's people that are like meant to have their own business, and there's people that love to be in collaborative businesses and relationships, right? So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. But for me, when I say just sort of letting myself operate from that place, it's basically acknowledging the uniqueness of who I was, and making space for my authenticity. Yeah. So for instance, in my numbers, so at the time I was in a business partnership where I was really under the thumb of somebody else. And so at that time, it was very clear to me I needed to be running my own business. So I had my nutrition practice, but it was really hooked into this other person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that, I was like, maybe I need to my numbers said that I needed to be running my own business. So that I needed to really be able to have the say in my own life.
Nice.
That I needed to be the power and the authority in my own life. Because I always, throughout my life, I had these figures in my life that sort of I yielded to, you know? So, so that's one example.
Do numbers change over time or not?
Your timing cycles do. So you can go through timing cycles. That's the other really interesting thing is most people that with the onset of sickness or illness, they're typically in a 5 or a 9
Mm-hmm.
universal year, because it's sort of like, it's really where you're pushed, your soul is pushed to make a change. And if you don't make a change, your body is going to, it's going to reveal it to
Manifest.
you. It's gonna,
Yeah. So it's more like a wake-up call, in a sense, a crisis to wake you up and go, hey, listen up.
Yeah, exactly. Like now's the time. Now's the time to wake up. Yeah.
Pretty fascinating. So you coach people in this, yeah? This is what you do.
Yeah, this is my passion. So I completely, what I did is I started to once I started getting better. So, I got better pretty fast, relatively speaking. So I was I got to be 100% recovered, probably within like 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, that's quick. That's quick for people. Yeah.
It's quite rapid.
Yeah.
But I also had nutrition on my side, so I was
just gonna say, like it's quick, but you're a healthy person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean. Like you did all the right things physically as well, and I think that's really important for people to realize. It's not like you just all of a sudden switched your thinking to like, oh my god, I'm better now. It was more just like, oh, all of a sudden, it all added up to all the work that you did physically and emotionally. And it got you to that place of improving.
Yeah, the spiritual component or the psychological component was the missing link for me, right? So that was like I was doing everything else, but that was the thing that I just wasn't doing that was constantly keeping me.
Yeah, and it was that was the last little part to the puzzle.
It was.
Right.
It was. So what I started to do is, to me, and I'd already kind of gotten to this place in my nutrition career where I would be counseling people, and it was never about food anyway. I mean, for me, even though nutrition is an amazing field and I'm so interested in it, I found that especially with eating disorders, we're talking about the way that how we treat food and how we interact with food and interact with our bodies is really about something even deeper than that, right? There's something else going on. It's a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to bring the numbers into some of my work with some of my clients, and they were getting results from this work faster than from anything that I had learned in school, from any sort of menu plan or grocery list that I was giving them.
Yeah.
That our souls are so hungry for recognizing that we have this purpose and we have a brilliance that most of us have been taught to repress and to push down into the shadows. So when I started to see that the people that I loved and cared about, my clients, were getting more results from this, I had to check my ego at the door. I did not want to become a numerologist. Just want to make that clear. Like it was.
It's a bit controversial. But what you do, like, I feel like, you're really just treating the person. You're not treating an illness or anything like that.
Yeah, it's the mystical is so important in our lives. I think it's just as tangible and just as profound and significant as the physical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we just don't. It's missing in our society, but I never would have been able to go into this work unless I didn't see those tangible results. If I didn't see that it was really helping people. So when I started seeing that it was helping people, I abandoned my nutrition career and I went straight into this.
Wow. Massive.
So now what I do is I consult individuals and companies on personality typing numbers, but I'd like to call them superpowers, because I've seen that we each have this supernatural capacity within us to affect our external world. and to affect obviously our physical bodies. And and so now I've made it my mission to do that. So not only people with illness, but with a wide variety of other desires that they have in their lives.
Yeah, well done. I think that, like I said, I wouldn't have reached out to you if I didn't think that what you were doing was special. And I just, yeah, if you haven't watched Nat's first or second video on how she cured chronic fatigue syndrome, I just really like what you spoke about, and I think it was really authentic and true. And that's what I really like about you and admire about you. So I appreciate you doing this interview as well. Just a quick question: do you still, like, now that you're better, just for people, because like once you're better, like what's it like? Like, do you still do all the healthy stuff? Do you still exercise? Do you still eat well? Do you look after yourself? I know it sounds like a silly question, but I'm doing it on purpose.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I would say that again, my appreciation for my body is like, I have a whole new attitude towards my body and towards a healthy lifestyle, which includes healthy nutrition, healthy movement, and also relaxation practice. So all of those things are very, very important. And I also want to say, because I think a lot of people think that, even in the recovery period, even when we're quote unquote healed, that we have to be like really careful and that we'll never be able to be 100% again. I go to the gym 6 days a week. I'm more active than I was in some ways back then.
Yeah.
I am in better shape. I can do more than I could do back then, but it's because I went through that healing process of recognizing what works for me and learning how to trust myself.
Nice. Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. And I mean, that's inspiring in itself. Like, people are going to be like, whoa. I mean, you look amazing. Like, you look at those muscles on your arms. Like, like you're toned and fit, and and you're a mum. Like, it's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I would say that it's even a better world after than it was before.
Yeah, amazing. Anything you want to add before we finish this up? Is there anything you'd like to say to anyone out there who's kind of struggling and needs a bit of Nat's inspiration? What would you like to say to the people out there?
I think I would say that there is a power that is inside of you that is so wise and so intelligent and so potent that you can trust it. You can trust that inner world that's inside of you. And that when you do that, that all of the decisions that you need to make in the physical world, that they'll come, and that they'll come with clarity, and they'll come with inspiration. And you know what, the last thing we didn't talk about, but I think is so important, is a support system. I think that if you're somebody that wasn't lucky, I was really lucky. I had a huge net of well, not huge, but I had a good net of people that were holistic nutritionists and naturopaths, friends who were just like, they had my back. They were there. And so if you're somebody who's suffering, make sure that you develop a really good support system. Whether that's, hiring you, Toby, getting...
Yeah, or like a coach, I mean, that's what we have with our program. We have like a full-on, proper support forum where you can chat, and get rid of all the crap that's not serving you, no negativity, nothing that's going to bring you down, only things that are going to lift you up. And, that's why, I resonate so much with you, and that's why we're doing this interview, because, you are a shining light for people, in the same sense that, you came from a place of complete darkness and there was no hope and light, because we kind of went through it at a similar kind of time frame. So back then, when you YouTubed or Googled, there was nothing positive or inspiring or inspirational like this out there, and that was my driving force. I don't know what it is for you, because you're just as incredible. You're doing amazing things. So, just to like put your stuff out there and share your truth, it's a light at the end of the tunnel for people, and I think that's what I needed. That boy inside me needed when I was so unwell, was to see that
Yeah.
light that I can, that it's possible, you know,
Yeah.
and you're doing it, you know, and that's, and like, I
I'm
just love it. I love it. It's awesome, you know.
Thanks, Toby. I really appreciate you.
No, I do, and yeah, your energy's awesome. We've only Skyped a few times, but every time we Skype, it's like it's just smiles and laughter. So it's cool. Hey, if people want to find out more about you, like, I mean, what's your YouTube channel? Because I want them to see your videos as well.
Yeah, yeah. If you're interested, it's Nats Numbers, Nats Numbers. That's my YouTube channel, and it's also the name of my website too, natsnumbers.com.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Yeah. And you know, again, it's not for everyone, but if you resonate with you know something in your heart, then you know go and reach out and go for it. You know, I think like you said before, everyone's path's different, and whatever resonates with you is what you really need to go and follow, right?
Yeah, yeah. And if you're somebody who's open to the spiritual component,
Mm,
and to the concept that you have a divine purpose, then my work would definitely be for you.
awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for jumping on. You are a
Thanks for
champion.
inviting me,
You're a
Toby.
legend. You're a legend. I love your accent. I love your accent too. All right. Thanks for joining, and we'll speak to you soon.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
Bye.
Nats. Bye.